So at some point they might come back and they might be heard in the background. There's nowhere to hide in this place. So
that's fine. That is the first acknowledgement from Kate that she is down in Florida because Kate and Cons are in Florida for Connor's wedding. So it's
now
just
we're not getting married, just to clarify.
True, you're not. That would be very troublesome. Like
yes.
If you guys got surprise married, I'd be pissed. Like how did I not know? I would feel like everything about myself had completely changed. That my being observant and things like that totally was off par. But today we do have 5 rounds in the magazine Big Show still. No, 4. No, 5. 4.
We got 5.
Oh, we'll do 4. Round number 1, update the safety brief. A woman had to go to the doctor in order to remove a glass jar from her anus. The glass was up there long enough to technically need new pro-con marks if she was a Marine. Round number 2, ladies and gentlemen, introducing Major Dick Bong. Round number 3, the worst wedding advice from each decade, and we're going to have a surprise note from Connor's fiance. I was texting her last night and asked her to give some things that Connor needs to improve upon, and the list is very good, and I automatically agreed with Alex and whatever.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
Oh, yeah. And round number 4, there's 4 Russian generals killed. We're going to give you an update about what's happening in Ukraine. The loss of life for the Russian soldiers has been staggering. Like when you try to put it in historical context, it's difficult to find battles that even we have on the U.S. side of history that aren't like Iwo Jima as far as the numbers of people lost in just 3 weeks. It's been pretty insane to watch. And we have a bunch of people on social media, dummies, that were very upset with some of the things that Zelensky was wearing. I feel like if your country is under siege, people should leave you the fuck alone about this. Is a very Connor remark, right? Like
saying he wasn't dressed up enough.
He's not dressed fancy enough. It's like going to a fancy steakhouse in New York. You got to dress fancy when you go to Congress. And people were saying, oh, whenever you're asking our government, you need to have a level of decorum, like to go into a respected institution like Congress. Have you seen the people in Congress lately? Yeah. They're not the most respectful bunch in the group either. A bunch of idiots over there.
I'd say the opposite, in fact.
Yeah, I think you should go in there and just give them the what for. Be like, hey, you pieces of shit, stop being dummies. This is what a real problem looks like over here. We got real issues over here. But I am excited that you're down there. First time that you got to take your baby to the beach.
Oh my gosh. So he's been cooped up in our small apartment and the weather's been terrible. Like it's been a slow warm up this spring. And so we've been feeling so cooped up. The past weekend, there was that nor'easter that went through. I just have him in his diaper running around the backyard, looking at I call them geckos, looking at geckos down here. The weather's just so nice. He's just been in his diaper cruising around the yard. We're looking at flowers and trees and the bees. There's ducks coming through the yard. We're at this little Airbnb in Bonita Springs, Florida. And it's great. And this morning we took him to the beach. He ran right into the water. It's so nice to, after being cooped up, to like get him out and about and not have to walk him in circles around our couch all day long. You know,
there is certain moments as a parent where you're like, this is pretty damn cool. And the first time going to a beach, vacations, and seeing, like going to Disney World and seeing the kids' faces light up, there's certain moments that are great. First time little toes in the beach and hitting the water and being like, whoa, what is this? This is different. This is a huge bathtub.
His face was in shock. He was just like looking around like what the hell is this? And
like, I wish that we could do that with adults. Like if like, let's say I come and take you, you have no idea where we're going. Because he didn't know that he was going on vacation either. He just like gets up one day, next morning he's on a plane. He's like, where the hell are we going, guys? This is insane. I'm usually at daycare right now. Next thing you know, what if I could do that to you? You had never heard of the beach. You don't know what it is. And I could just take you and be like, Kate, what do you think of this?
Well, you know that I'm sure we all have this daydream where George Washington comes back and you get to show him everything.
No.
What's that movie? It was from the 80s and all the historic figures come back to life and they take them to the mall.
Encino Man?
Maybe it might be Encino Man. But anyway, it's been my dream to show George Washington. I'm like, dude, this is an escalator. Okay. Can you believe it? This is the New York City now.
He like grips onto the side like, oh God.
He looks like Elf getting off it.
Yeah.
So I always wanted to do that. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah. He's like getting off the fucking boat and Washington just cruising down in his little knickers.
Yep. With his little curly white.
It is hard to say that the most fearsome general in the history of the United States wore knickers.
Yeah. Capris really
Right.
is what they are, with little buttons on them.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so yeah, you get to do that with the baby essentially. I didn't realize you get to show them everything and be like, isn't this fucking sweet?
And you get to get them hammered on some whistle pig, which is awesome. Like you just
Until they're 21.
Just pour it down the old gullet there for a 1-year-old. They love it. If you not for a 1-year-old, if you want to get your own whistle pig,
21-year-old,
make sure that you go to whistle pig or cans at whistlepig.com with the promo code ZBT 2020 to get 10% off. They still got that St. Patrick's Day deal going on right now. It's delicious. They have the fresh ginger lime, the blackberry lemon fizz, the session citrus mint is what they have as well. It's all made from 100% estate grown rye whiskey at the Whistle Pig Farm. That was a very tongue twistery type of ad read today.
What?
I was struggling to get through that, but I don't struggle when I'm down in the old 12-ounce can with 8% alcohol by volume. Make sure you get that by going to cans at whistlepig.com with the promo code ZBT22 to get 10% off your order. First up, we are going to get into a little bit of a safety brief. I saw this one coming, and I've told you a little bit about my obsession with like Discovery Plus shows. I've been watching all of those, not just 1,000-Pound Sisters, but there's like a whole squad of them. They got 1,000-Pound Sister, 1,000-Pound Best Friend, Family by the Ton, Too Large.
Family by the Ton.
Family by the Ton is low-key crazy too, because it's just a whole family of fats, multiple family of fats. They're trying to get it together, and they are not a good support system. Okay.
No.
There's one in the Family by the Ton where the brother and sister, they go to pick up pizzas for the whole family. They're having like a big family get together to celebrate their weight loss journey, and they're having like a pizza party to do that, which doesn't make a whole
bad
lot of
idea.
sense.
I feel like slippery slope.
The guy and his sister, they're both in their like early 30s. They stop by this pizza joint, pick up like 15 pizzas for like 20 people, which is, first of all, crazy town. They eat they said it was like 7-mile drive from the pizza place to the house. On the way, they crushed like 4.5 pizzas between the two of them. And it is phenomenal to watch. They'll just pick up 2 pieces and crush them down. And then they go in after eating 4.5 pizzas, 5 pizzas between the two. They go into the get together and they're like, all right, you guys ready to eat? We're starving. And they acted like they didn't have anything.
You have to respect it. Honestly.
So that I forgot why I had mentioned that I was watching those shows, but another show that's on there is called Stuck, where they go into the emergency room and they find things that have been put up different body cavities, or it could be like a splinter that you get through your arm or something like that.
I'm afraid you see the kids put like, they'll take a pinto bean and stick it way up their nose, or
my sister did that with the little beads that are inside bean bags and had to go to the doctor to get it out.
Oh yeah, I remember when I was a kid, one of my neighbors, she put something real small, like way deep into her ear, and had to go get it taken out. So yeah, like you people, I'm sure doctors find all sorts of. I would love to be in a doctor's smoke pit talking about this, the weirdest things they've had to remove from people.
It's the ER doctors, and that's what the guy was saying. Like there's a dude that came in, and he was like, about 4 or 5 days ago, I felt what felt like a roach or something crawling in my ear. And then he was like, a day later, he said, he juiced an onion and got the juice of an onion and put it into his ear, because it's like this ancient Indian remedy, like from India, country of. And he put it in his ear and it said it killed the roach, and he had to go get it taken out. And the doctor said roaches are one of the worst things to get in your ear because they have the pokey feet. And he was like, your eardrum is so thin that if you try to grab a roach with like tweezers and it really digs its fingers in, those little fingers from a roach can completely shred your eardrum.
Oh, that's the grossest thing I've ever heard. Oh my God.
Yeah. We'll wait until we actually get into round 1, because that's what I thought of when I saw this. And a little bit of brownie throat almost came in.
Yeah.
Clear
it out.
We're good. I think we're good. I don't know why I haven't had brownies in a while. Let's walk through round number 1, a little emergency room visit.
Okay. A woman who where did you find this, by the way? How did you stumble upon this?
This one's from the old New York Post.
Okay. Oh, classic. Okay. A woman who doctors thought had a UTI actually had a glass tumbler stuck in her bladder for 4 years. In her bladder, a glass tumbler?
Wait until
What?
you hear why.
The 45-year-old had come to the hospital complaining of typical lower UTI, urinary tract infection symptoms such as leaking. But doctors were left stunned when scans
Why couldn't they
revealed there
go
was
with incontinence there? Like, why do you say she's leaking?
leaking. Yeah,
Like she's a
I prefer
fucking water
incontinence.
hose or a
But
horned up.
doctors were left stunned when scans revealed there was a glass inside her bladder. I didn't even know that was possible. It was encased by an 8 centimeter wide bladder stone, which are normally so small they're hard to see with the naked eye. The woman from Tunisia revealed she had used the drinking glass as a sex toy a number of years before. Evidently, she had inserted it into the urethra, the hole which females urinate from, rather than the vagina. How?
Yeah,
That's not
just it's when I read it, because you come across a New York Post article about a glass jar being in somebody's vagina like every other week. This one's a little different because it's in the urethra, so we got to bring some attention to it.
well, her case was published in a medical journal, including the astonishing scan and an image of the glass and the bladder stone.
Now, this
Well,
is something that I couldn't include here, but this is the part that is really legitimately insane because they did the ultrasounds. And, like when you do an ultrasound, if you're having a baby, or they'll do it if you have like something going on with your kidneys or anything internal, they'll look at it with the ultrasound. Well, when it comes up, it just looks like essentially a softball sized cyst. Like it has biomaterial on it that you would get if you just had a cyst. Like, and sometimes it can be really hard, like a rock, like a kidney stone. This one grew like this cyst grew around the glass. Like it almost, how they'll take a car and they'll put it on like a barrier reef or something like that. So you'll create a habitat. Her body essentially created a kidney stone habitat or bladder stone habitat by using it to put its own little barnacles around.
oh my God. I did not know this was
I didn't know it
humanly
was possible either. It blew my mind when I was reading this.
While the medical report does not mention it, the woman may have been practicing what's known as urethral sounding. The risky activity involves inserting a glass or object into the urethra, the tube that urine passes through, to heighten arousal. It's so small. I didn't even know there was really like a whole.
I mean, we're talking
didn't
about
know
a full out glass too. Like this is like a highball Rambler size glass. This is big.
Doctors have reports of people deliberately placing things there, either due to mental health problems or for pleasure, but it's not recommended.
Right.
Various objects have been inserted into the bladder, and many patients fail to remove them. Yeah, you're not getting that out. You're not getting that out. But then they're too embarrassed to seek medical advice. So fair enough. Fair enough.
That's true. I mean, who wants to go in there and be like, Doc, so I got a glass in my cooch.
Yeah. There might be a small Ninja Turtle toy in my bladder. I don't want to talk about it. It's Donatello.
Donatello's really giving me the what for up there.
Yeah, it's not great. The patient arrived at the emergency department with UTI symptoms. She reported that she had suffered cysts in her bladder several times before, but had not investigated. There was no blood in her urine. She was not suffering any incontinence. But she did have a higher than normal red blood cell range. So the body was fighting an infection. The bladder stones are usually very small, but this patient's was 8 centimeters wide. And yeah, so that's just insane. They had to do surgery to remove the bladder stone. And when they cracked it open, the glass was still fully intact as it had been for years.
It's like a Russian nesting doll.
2 days later, the woman was recovered and well enough to go home and probably do it all over again. That is insane. I never.
So be advised, do not do that. Like, even though something, if it feels good in the moment, next thing you know, you're getting surgery, getting it removed from your urethra.
I'm sure with men, that's a whole. If there's a hole, there's a thing for it.
Well, what people are doing with their penises these days, Kate, it'll absolutely blow your mind.
Forget it.
There's a fellow on TikTok who brags about how much of his body is covered in tattoos, and he is real creepy about it because he'll be like, "Oh yeah, my whole body's tattooed, like everything," and you're like, "Okay, we get it. You tattooed your balls." Like,
that's gotta be tough to do.
Oh yeah, for
you
sure.
Need a sturdy surface, I feel like.
Very sturdy surface.
All
right, let's move on to round number 2. We're going to talk a little bit about Dick Bong. You had never heard of Dick Bong before?
No, people on the ZBT were like, you guys are just finding this out now. And I was like, oh, my bad. So you had?
Oh yeah, I've heard of Dick Bong.
I'd never heard of him. I was scrolling Twitter and this woman at Backline Nurse, she tweeted this. She said, I recently learned that the US pilot with the most downed planes during aerial combat in World War II was a guy from Wisconsin named Dick Bong, and I have not since recovered. She included the Wikipedia of Dick Bong, and it's Major Richard Bong, Major Dick Bong. And that's, he went by Dick, and it was Major Dick Bong. So I was reading the comments. We posted this on ZBT. Chaps, you wrote 23-year-old Kate walks in and sees old Dick Bong. And then people from that area, from his hometown, started tweeting, there's a Bong Bridge and a Bong recreational area. There's in Burlington, Wisconsin, there's a park named after him.
I will say that's one of my favorite aspects of ZBT, like being a bigger account on Instagram and Twitter, is when we post something like this, there's inevitably somebody from that area that knows way more about it than we do, and they get so amped about it. Especially when somebody like, if Dick Bong is from Manhattan, I don't feel like this same kind of stuff happens. But because he's from a tiny town in Wisconsin, people are like, oh man, this is the Bong capital of the world here. This is where we're at.
Yeah, this is where it's at. Well, somebody from that area said, D Pierce 48 said, I made a model of his P-38 when I was a kid and gave a presentation to the class telling his story. I remember going home mad after everyone was laughing when I said his name and I couldn't figure out the humor. I've been chasing that level of innocence ever since.
God, that would be infuriating if you're like this kid who's been sheltered and you're telling this story about Dick Bong and everybody's laughing about it. That's not nice to do.
Well, I didn't realize that. So he was a United States Army Air Forces major and a Medal of Honor recipient in World War II. He was one of the most decorated American fighter pilots and the country's top flying ace in the war. He shot down over 40 Japanese aircraft, all with the Lockheed P-38 Lightning fighter. That, to me, that's insane. And somebody had asked in the comments, like, how did he kill that many? Somebody said he used a method through dogfighting that didn't allow his camera to see some of the unconfirmed kills, that the number is probably way higher than that, like way higher. But it's just fascinating. He ended up dying not long after the war ended while testing another Lockheed plane. The plane's primary fuel pump malfunctioned during takeoff, and he either forgot to switch the auxiliary pump or for some reason just couldn't do it. He cleared away from the aircraft, but he was too low for his parachute to deploy. And he died at Oxnard Street and Satsuma Avenue in North Hollywood. His plane crashed in Hollywood. His death was front page news across the country, and it shared a space with the first news of the bombing of Hiroshima.
Wow.
In his autobiography, Chuck Yeager, he's getting people on Twitter left and right.
Oh yeah, he fucks.
Yeah. He writes that part of the culture of test flying at the time, due to its fearsome mortality rates, was anger towards pilots who died in test flights to avoid being overcome by sorrow for lost comrades. Bong's brother Carl, who wrote his biography, questions whether Bong repeated the mistake so soon after mentioning it to another pilot. Just a really fascinating. I just highly recommend looking up the whole story. He's just a really fascinating person. But that led me to believe there's all sorts of funny names. I know I served with an areola, which it's another word for nipple. But
it is.
He was, yeah. I served with a Lance Corporal Areola. I was in boot camp with a rug, and the drill instructors would be like, "Don't make me cut a rug over here." And
oh god, they'll get you. Hey there, fucking carpet.
But so Reddit had this thread of the funniest names. Like, what are some of the funniest names you actually saw in the fleet? This first person said a field officer of the day was Major Boner that he had, and other people confirmed it. I saw his name tape and started doing the math on something to say. He cut me off. Save it, specialist. I've heard them all. We had someone else said we had a PFC major once, fucking private major. We also had a specialist sergeant. That was confusing.
I worked with a sergeant.
Somebody said they worked with a major. And now somebody else said of the first guy, he's a sergeant major now. Someone had a Seaman Star Cruiser, which is awesome. Hopefully they're in the Space Force now.
That would be incredible. Well, clearly
somebody
they're in
else,
the Navy, yeah. But that would be
somebody
great.
Else graduated basic with an Airman Marine.
Oh.
Their last name was Airman Marine. Lieutenant Gooch. And then a bunch of people replied that they served with the Gooch as well. I know a Lieutenant Glasscock, deepest goddamn voice you ever heard. Captain Balls. I volunteered to sing the national anthem at his promotion ceremony just so I could hear them say Major Balls for the first time. Seaman Staines. when I was a boot, and then this person also said, and when I was a boot, I saw a weenus. So there was a semen stains and a semen weenus.
Weenus might be the worst because we weenus. Hey, they're fucking weenus.
You cannot join the armed services. I'm sorry.
Come here, weenus.
If that's your last name.
Weenus. Fucking weenus.
Can you imagine in the heat of battle being like, weenus?
You gotta be either shit hot to get away with being named Weenus, or you just walk in just knowing 4 years. See, if I was a recruiter, if a recruiter had integrity and somebody comes in and says, my last name's Weenus, I'm looking to join, they'd be like, get out. No,
you don't want to do
this to yourself.
You do not want to do
Change
this.
your last name first. Fucking Weenus.
They were in the Navy. Can you imagine a Marine, like a crazy drill instructor going after a Weenus? Yeah. Dog sweet to me too, Weenus.
Chief Weenus.
Also, too, if Weenus becomes senior, I feel like as a junior troop, it's very hard to take a Weenus seriously.
Captain Weenus.
Like, I don't want to be on Captain Weenus's ship. I just don't. I don't want to go into battle with Major Weenus.
Get Weenus on the gun right now.
Wait, Colonel Weenus? Can you General Weenus? I can't.
It's so stupid. All right, let's move on to the wedding round. I went through because you and I both had bad experiences before.
A little bit divorced.
Yeah.
A little bit divorced. Just
divorced. We both did the very junior enlisted thing of getting married very young, very quickly, I would say very stupidly. Like that's
very, very much
very
so.
stupidly. But now I've been in a happy relationship, a happy marriage for 12 years. It'll be 12 years this year. I'm not sure when I actually got married, and I always fuck it up even to my wife's face. I mess up how long. I don't think it's fair. Because we got married in like an off year, like a 2009, it's unfair to expect how many years. Like that would be my advice. Get married in a clean year, like a 5 or a 0.
Make it easy. And I would say it's beneficial now. If you're out there and you're a veteran who's divorcing another veteran for the first time, consider it. Do an after action report, take some lessons learned, and then for the next one's going to be a hoot. It's going to be
don't share each other's nudes.
Don't share each other's nudes.
You don't want to be that person just tweeting out pictures of your beloved's butthole. You don't want to do that.
No, you don't. That's a big no.
But I went online and found all the different bad advice, because there is some good advice out there and some bad advice. So do you want to walk through some bad advice for cons or good advice?
So here's so you found these from like early 1900s marriage advice columns and books and stuff like that. And the times they haven't changed. So these are like reading them now. It's like, what?
Well, let's see if we should bring them back or if it was good or bad.
Okay, this one's from the 1900s. From the wedding day, the young matron should shape her life to the probable contingency of conception and maternity. Wrote Emma Frances Angel Drake in her 1902 marriage manual, what a young wife ought to know. Otherwise, she has no right or title to wifehood. So you better be ready to be a baby machine. She also advised young wives to keep pace with their husband's mental growth, which sounds great for a minute, she went on. In this day of literary clubs and reading circles, the ambition to excel and keep pace with other women in mental culture will prove a snare if not guarded against. So no more book club. So let your husband grow mentally, but you stay right where you're at.
It's amazing to think how different life was just like 130 years ago. Can you imagine saying that to someone now? Like, look, you don't need to be in those damn books so much.
Some of that's still going on in certain religious sects where, it's nutty.
Oh, yeah. There was when I went to seminary, there was a huge portion of the population that was there to get what they would call the MRS degree, where they weren't looking for an actual degree. They were just looking for a husband. They're looking to be a pastor's wife.
Oh, yeah. Not the 1910s, divorce or ignore your wife if she doesn't agree with you. A modern woman who is the contentious type is often amenable to love and reason. If she will only listen quietly, a process that is painful to her, you may firmly, rationally, and kindly convince her she is not always in the right. A woman who will not listen to such a manifesto must be dismissed from your life. And that's from Walter Galligan in his 1910 book, Modern Woman and How to Tame Her.
Oh,
So there's the
Tame.
same
How to
fuckboys
tame
who
her.
write the blogs today, who write those like, here's how to get a woman. And it's like those incel dudes. They've always been around. 1920s. Don't drink tea and coffee because you won't be bonky anymore, aka horny. Tea and coffee are not ordinarily considered poisonous, yet their effect is unquestionably poisonous. If you drink too much of it, you might be frigid. You might not be down to get it on. This was written in the book Womanhood and Marriage by Bernard McFadden. I will agree. I will say, in the morning, if I have like a bean and egg burrito, and a large coffee, I don't feel like
Yeah, I think that's fair. That's good advice. Like,
that's good advice.
And if somebody has coffee breath,
you don't want to do that.
you really don't.
Minus 5 points for face cream. George W. Crane, a PhD, developed a set of marital rating charts in the 1930s, complete with a point system that allowed you to grade your husband or wife with a numerical score. We need to bring this back.
See, this is why I have this. This one's good. Like, honest to God, there's something special about getting a score. Like, think about when you were in second or third grade. Second or third grade, somebody comes up to you and like, hey, today I was just watching you from afar. I'm going to go ahead and give you a 9. You didn't know that person was judging you. You didn't know that they were going to give you a score. But the fact that you got a 9, the next day you're coming back and looking for a 10. Like, if my wife came up to me on a Saturday and was like, hey, you did a great job today. I didn't have to ask you to take out the trash. I didn't have to ask you to mow the lawn. I asked you here's an 8. I'd be like, oh, next Saturday it's going down and I'm going to get a 10. Like, I feel like this score, try it with Pat. Maybe try it with Pat while you're at Constance's wedding.
Well, so back in the 1930s, women would lose points if they didn't like kids, if they wore red nail polish, if they went to bed with curlers in their hair, or if they were wearing face cream after going to sleep at their house.
They're basically doing uniform inspections.
For men, they would lose points if they stared at other women, but only while out with his wife. If he's not with her, he can look. Bringing surprise guests home for dinner, comparing his wife to his mother, and leaving his shoes in the living room.
That bringing home a surprise guest for dinner, I could see that getting you in big trouble.
Today, I feel like it would be like playing video games too long. In our case, somebody likes to stand at the toilet and pee without using their hands sometimes.
I feel like he's well within his rights there.
That's insane. There's a lot of things. Yes,
you should just do it too.
I'm going to start doing it. He doesn't realize after the show is over. 1940s, if you're a woman, don't talk about your problems.
That's good. I like that one too.
In the 1943 book Sex Today and Wedded Life, be a good listener. Let your husband tell you all his troubles, and yours will seem trivial in comparison. Oh boy.
I feel like it's the other way for my relationship. My wife's doing like actual work, and I'm like, man, I can't find any fucking poop stories to blog about. This is insane.
There's only one bladder urethra story going out today. 1950s, being your wife is your career. Reader's Digest said to be a successful wife is a career in itself. You got to have the qualities of a diplomat, a businesswoman, a good cook, a trained nurse, a school teacher, a politician, and a glamour girl. Boy,
I feel like that is correct. Like, that's not what you should do, but I feel like that is the expectation in a lot of ways.
Still probably is. I'm none of those things, unfortunately.
Oh, no, you're a school principal.
That's cool. You're right. I was cool. Did you see my itinerary for my plane flight?
No.
Oh, I tweeted it out. I did you've seen some of my itineraries before, have you? When I travel and I'm like, here's where.
I've seen them, but I've never read them before because it's just way too involved.
Yeah, I did for our trip. I did a minute by minute itinerary to make sure that we got to our flight and that the whole trip went smooth yesterday. Mm-hmm. And so it was literally broken down to like, we're waking up at 5. At 5:35, we are locking our apartment door. At 5:40, we are in the parking garage. At 5:43, we're leaving the parking garage gates. At this time, it was almost like minute by minute. It was like a 5 minute.
But do you stick to that because you're not super regimented?
When it comes to like flight days with the babies, I do. When the shuttle bus left at exactly the time I thought it was going to from the parking spot, I was like, I had like a lady boner. I was like, I am fucking crushing it today.
See, that's a big difference in you. Like that is a difference between Katie mom and Katie before. Like Katie mom would not do that. Like that's not what you're doing.
I'd miss my flight.
Right.
I would just miss my flight. Yeah. Oh yeah. I had what time? I was like 6:07. Purchase a bagel from the whatever. 6:09.
Wow.
Change the baby's name. Oh yeah. I people on Twitter said I was a lunatic. I feel like I earned major points for that. So maybe I do have a skill there. 1960s. This one's terrible. From the Ladies' Home Journal. Can this marriage be saved column? A guy wrote that a woman who didn't want to have sex, basically, if the guy was being a shitty guy, solve it with sex. You're probably not in the mood if that's the case.
And shitty guy, you're being very nice. It's domestic violence.
Domestic violence.
The article basically says if your husband's beating you, give him some cheeks.
Yeah. Terrible. I'm going to say it's terrible advice.
Yeah, that might be the worst advice. If he's beating you, shoot him.
Yeah. Dear fucking Abby, 1973, 10 commandments for today's wives. And she wrote this one. Permit no one to tell thee that thou art having a hard time, neither thy mother, thy sister, nor thy neighbor, for the judge will blah, blah, blah. Basically, don't nag, she's saying. She's like, don't act like you're having a hard time. Don't be a nag. What? Screw you, dear Abby. I hate her. I hate her now.
And she's saying, don't defile your body with excessive food, tobacco, and alcohol.
But basically, going through this list, like all this advice is all terrible advice.
What do you think would be good advice, though?
What do I think would be good advice? Oh, man. I don't know because I suck at it, I guess.
I'll give some advice to cons.
Yes.
One, my number one advice. If you don't care, don't argue about it. Like there's so many things that I feel like I don't necessarily care about, but then when it's brought to my attention, I might care a little bit. And you always have to go back to the 2 minutes before that where you don't care. Like if it's like, what are we having for dinner? And you don't want that one thing, suck it up. Dinner is like a small example, but there's a lot like decorating the house, for example. Mm-hmm. Do I care a little bit what my house looks like whenever I walk in? Sure. Do I care enough to put in the amount of effort that she does to like decorate the house? No, I do not. And so when she does it, I'm like, this is great. Whatever she wants to put out, I'm like, this is fantastic. If she wants some certain bath towels or some pillows that are on the bed that are extra, that's not worth fighting over. Just fucking let it go. There's so many things that we get all wrapped around the axle about. In reality, you don't care. So don't act like you care. I feel like it's the opposite of what so many have said for so long about relationships where everybody needs to act like they're invested. I disagree. If you're not invested in something, don't act like you are, because if the other person is, just let them have their way.
Just let it go. Just let it go. Yeah, sadly I have no advice. I am still not good at this.
Well, Cons' fiance sent us some things directly that he needs to work on.
Pros and cons. Pros and
cons. I haven't showed you this list yet. Are you ready?
Nope. This is
from Alex. And this is actually, she sent it to me last night at 7:30 is whenever she sent it. I asked her to, like, what does old Cons need to work on? Number one.
By the way,
yeah,
in bold at the top, she wrote improvements.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a list here I'm seeing. Okay, go ahead.
Number one, this is an issue that you've had with Connor as well. Connor lies when he farts. Mm-hmm. He will rip ass, and then I'll ask him, quote, did you fart? And he looks stunned and disgusted. It's really not the act of the fart, but more the cover up.
I agree.
It's an integrity issue.
He's being an integrity violator,
which we've come to expect, sadly. Mm-hmm. The next one, Connor has, this one made me fucking want to puke, honest to God. Like I'm feeling kind of sick thinking about it. Connor has a baby voice sometimes, and I know he's trying to be cute. It's something that we need to move on. Connor, you disgusting fucking pig.
We need to move on from it.
You disgusting little worm. A baby voice from Connor. That's just gross.
I've never heard it. I haven't heard.
We need to have it. I need to hear it.
On the next show, we're going to make him do it. We're going to make him do the baby voice.
I imagine it's like Annie Bernard, like, little Andy wants to. Oh, God. Connor looks like an Easter egg from late March through August every year. While the pastels are okay to him, it's upsetting to those around him.
I'm wondering what he's going to wear to the wedding. I bet you there'll be some kind of pastel vibe going. Am I wrong? His shoes were fire, though. I've seen his shoes.
Well, yeah, the red bottoms. He went with red bottom shoes.
Red bottoms. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So interesting.
Well, that's because he didn't order his other ones early enough, and they didn't come. So he had to go with a different one. He was going to have some custom made shoes. Next thing you know, he couldn't because he waited too long.
These are
Maybe
my wedding shoes.
you should have wrote up a little itinerary for him.
I should have had him on point for that. Next up, Connor is a horrible driver. I won't elaborate, but he's horrible. Did we not remember on the way to the Army Navy game when Connor was driving and we were on I-95? Didn't he switch lanes and we almost all just got crushed?
Oh yeah,
at one point. Yeah, I remember that. This one doesn't let her watch Christmas movies outside of December when Home Alone is her third favorite movie of all time. As a fellow Home Alone head,
I mean, do you think this falls under Dear Abby's advice of don't nag? I mean, you do get a full solid 31 days of Christmas movies.
It's not enough. I could watch Home Alone in the middle of July and really, truly enjoy it. So I feel her on that. That's
Cardi
ridiculous.
did it. My youngest did it whenever I think McCartney was like 6, and every day from like Christmas all the way through spring break, we're still cruising through Home Alone 2. Like every day.
Well, that's because they're a person of taste.
True.
As am I. I totally understand that. Yeah, I think this list, the lies when he farts, we've talked about a few times on the show, but there was a point in Daytona where we were hot and tired and he farted in our vehicle. And I like literally, it's very rare that I like am actually angry. And I like was actually angry.
Well, because he blamed it on Iraq.
He blamed it. Well, first he tried to deny it, and then he blamed it on Iraq. He said it was the result of something in Iraq that he had.
And I think he usually can get away with that. But with other people who have also been deployed, we were like, shut the fuck up. This has not, you just stink, dude. You ate.
Mine are still like
disgusting
roses,
stuff.
So,
oh, wow. And the last one he says the bar is she says is the bar is very low with food. Lots of canned tuna fish, time and place for that, but not with pasta. And I have been told he likes to eat tuna fish and peanut butter sandwiches. Real.
Behind this fancy cons facade,
it's an act.
There's a Kate in there somewhere. Farting, eating gross canned food.
Well, you can't hide the jersey forever.
No, that's a good point. That's an excellent point. That's fair. Well, I hope they have I'm so excited for this wedding. I just love hors d'oeuvres. I love love. I love hors d'oeuvres. I love free booze. I mean, what's not to like? A couple of other coworkers are going to be here. I'm excited to see. Got the baby down here. I sent Cons a picture of the baby outside this morning. I was like, thanks for getting married down here. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's very nice. All right, let's do a little bit of a Ukraine update of what's going on. All right, let's do a Ukraine update. Kate, what do we got?
Well, this is staggering. Russia has lost up to 28,000 soldiers killed and wounded during 3 weeks of fighting in Ukraine, the U.S. believes, as Vladimir Putin's invasion stalls on all fronts, but the shelling of cities continues in Kiev and other major cities around Ukraine.
And this update is a combination from Reuters, Al Jazeera, AP, and the Washington Post. So when I first saw that number, 28,000, I knew that the Ukrainian Defense Forces have been publishing the numbers of things that they've done to the Russians and the amount of planes and helicopters and things, but those are all really exaggerated numbers that they're putting out. These are the conservative estimates from our State Department and DOD of what, from the battle damage assessments of what they're doing from satellite imagery and things like that. 28,000 killed and wounded. That's the conservative side of the estimate. That's crazy.
It's crazy. The Pentagon estimates at least 7,000 Russian troops have now died in the fighting, while another 14,000 to 21,000 have been wounded, accounting for nearly a fifth of the estimated 150,000 men that Putin amassed on the border before giving the order to attack 21 days ago. The staggering toll is roughly double NATO losses in Afghanistan over 2 decades of fighting and roughly equal to U.S. casualties in the 36-day Battle of Iwo Jima, one of the bloodiest clashes in the Pacific during the Second World War. Losses are now so severe, U.S. intelligence believes some Russian units cannot keep fighting. The tallies with assessments by British intelligence.
So on that part where you can't keep fighting, I was reading a thread and then an article, like a academic journal, about what it would take for combat troops and combat battalions to be considered a loss. It's only 10%. So if you lose 10% of a battalion, then you're no longer effective in your mission. And the best you can possibly do is treading water. So that's what they're saying. And that they're saying that those convoys, like the 40-mile convoy that's coming in, they've lost 20 to 30% of all of those units. So they won't be able to recover. So that convoy that's coming in that's 40 miles long, they don't believe it'll ever be able to move as it currently is. That they're going to have to bring in all kinds of reinforcements and gather around that group and bring in gas and bring in all kinds of stuff, because right now it's completely ineffective.
Well, too, I'm thinking about here. We've heard so much about their logistics issues,
Mm-hmm.
and I would imagine with the tens of thousands that are being severely wounded, I would imagine getting them medical care and then getting them out of there is not going well.
Right.
And I would imagine that has to be crushing for morale as well.
Oh, not just that, but it's something that so many news sites are joking about, and where the Russians are trying to go to China to get MREs because they don't have enough MREs. You're in a war that you don't want to be in, that you don't know why you're there, and they lied to you about why you're going, and now you're hungry, and a tenth of your unit has died or been wounded in action. The morale factor here is going to be crushing to the Russians. There's absolutely no way they can recover. I mean, they're eating spoiled MREs as it is, and then when you're bringing in ones from China, like, I'm sure that the Chinese MREs are good, but imagine the different in diets of the way Russians eat and the way Chinese people eat. Like, from a super bland diet that has no spice whatsoever, and it's just like potatoes and rice and fucking fish and shit, to the way that Chinese folks eat, completely different. So now you're probably going to be shitting your ass off while you're fighting in a battle that you don't want to be in. I don't know how you can do that. I just don't.
Just even too, the food you love is morale, like
Right.
the food you know is morale. But I so I was I'm sure the answer's out there somewhere. I know we've seen videos of captured Russians saying this was all a mistake. We didn't want to be here. We don't want this, blah, blah, blah. But there's still tens and tens of thousands fighting and targeting civilians. And so part of me has a small bit of empathy for the young guys that basically got conscripted into this and they truly don't want to be there. But then I was like, how many of them are just saying that because that's what they've been trained to say by Russia if they get captured or something, like, oh, we didn't know. And then with these losses, like, how do they keep going? Like, they must, because they keep going, they must have to believe in what they've been told, right? That Ukraine is evil and that they like.
For sure they do. Yeah. I mean,
So I would just love to be in a smoke pit there. And like, I know in Afghanistan on my first deployment, after some really rough days, the conversation in the smoke pit was like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, why are we doing this? But yet we still kept going out and doing it. Like, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah, like putting yourself in that position at 22 and
I'm
your
trying to put myself
commanders
in their shoes,
there, and like you go, like, okay, like for us when we were in Iraq, like, why are you in Iraq? Well, we're here because 9/11 happened. Like, that's what most people would say, even though they're not connected at all. Like like it came about because of 9/11, but really Iraq had and never was suspected of having any major involvement in 9/11. But you're still there.
We weren't really sure. The difference is we weren't targeting civilians and committing war crime. Like, we weren't doing the horrible things that they are doing. But I'm still wondering, like, what I would love to know, like, what is the actual vibe among the units? Like, are they like, this fucking sucks, but I'll get in huge trouble or I'll get maybe even killed if I abandon and try to go home? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, with the news that came out about having like different yardarms and shit around the squares in Moscow for traitors. I mean, it would be incredibly scary to feel like that you're going to go back and face your government whenever you came. Like, it's an impossible situation for the Russian soldiers. But I mean, you see so many of them fleeing their tanks and fleeing their convoys and just not showing back up. Just like, I'm out of here.
Well, I wonder too, one of the big turning points for Vietnam was they finally hit a death toll that was so staggering that the US public opinion was like, we're done. We're done. Like, no more. What do Russians like? There's thousands of moms and dads right now being informed that their babies are dead, like their sons and daughters are dead now. And when do they start to say, well, what did they die for? Like, what's the point of this? Like, is this really true? Or does the state media have such a hold on them that they're like, they died with honor? Like, I'm just really curious about, I have so many questions about the whole thing. It's just wild. I feel like they truly went in there when Ukraine had done nothing wrong. And like, it's just, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. And
It's
I can't.
tough. I mean, when those pictures and videos of like the one where there was another schoolhouse that was in Ukraine and they wrote outside the buildings children, and they wrote it in Russian to children here, and they still bombed it the next day. I feel like when that gets back to places, people aren't going to be super fucking thrilled with
And that was the
Putin's.
theater. That was the big theater that had pretty much all the children, like hundreds of children in it. And you're right, outside in White Rocks, they wrote out kids in here, Russia, like don't hit. Well, I saw this thread, somebody commenting on that. I mean, they turned that place to rubble and they're still digging kids out of the basement of this place. I saw a thread where somebody's like, oh, they haven't learned the lessons that Syria knows very well, where usually any place that was marked women and children, like on the rooftops or whatever, trying to keep Russia from bombing these areas, those were the first that went. Russia was indiscriminately bombing women and kids and spots
because
marked.
it produces fear.
It produces fear.
And
so
like
they're like,
they'll give up. Yeah.
They said they got to stop marking that stuff because Russia will actually target it first, which is fucking sickening. The bombardment of Ukrainian cities continues. Nevertheless, Kiev was struck by missiles in the early hours. One was shot down, though wreckage still struck a 16-story apartment building, killing one person and sparking fires that injured others. Mariupol, the heavily besieged city in the south of Ukraine, also continued to come under heavy fire. At least 2,400 people have been killed there. The mayor said the toll could be as high as 20,000 once the cutoff areas have been searched for victims. 20,000.
Yeah,
The latest,
and that city is essentially like flattened, like where when you go in and look at it, it's the inside of it is just completely been flattened by bombs.
Yeah, the latest assaults on civilians across Ukraine came as President Zelensky made a searing appeal for help to the U.S., which responded by pledging $1 billion of new weapons to fight Russia's invading army. Officials across Ukraine are struggling to count the civilian dead, with authorities saying 103 children have been killed since the invasion began because they're targeting, like we just said, homes, hospitals, ambulances, food queues. We saw maternity wards, children cancer wards, children's theaters where children are hiding. In the port city of Mariupol, where more than 2,000 people have died so far, this is the drama theater that had over 1,000 people inside. That's what we were just talking about. Satellite images of the theater. We already covered all this with everything, but it's just hard to, like, who's the one pulling the trigger to bomb something that they know is full of children? Like, whoever's doing that must truly believe in whatever they've been told. Like, I have a hard time believing someone's just inherently evil in that way, but I believe that they have become evil through like the shit they're being told. Like, I can't even make an excuse for it, but I keep trying to imagine what these people are thinking, what the Russians are thinking as they do these things. I can't fathom it.
It's impossible to be in that position and try to figure out what your motives is to kill kids and young mothers. Like, it's just beyond comprehension. And like, we've been doing this now, and it's strange to say, like, 3-4 weeks later, like, you're looking at it and you're like, when does it end? And some U.S. intelligence reports saying that it could not end for a long time, and what those people are going through. And then to have idiots like Peter Schiff, who were you familiar with who he was?
No, give us some background on who he was, and I'll read his tweet.
So he's the guy that really predicted the economy's collapse in 2008. He was one of the first financial advisors to look at the housing markets, to look at the stock market and say, we are on the verge of a huge bubble bursting. And he said it first in 2006, I believe. And then all of his markers of what was going to happen in the economy actually came true. And now a lot of Bitcoin bubbas hate him because he's very anti-Bitcoin and thinks that it's worthless and pointless and people are just going to lose a shit ton of money. So he's like hated on that front. And then yesterday he had a crazy tweet that is just the most elitist, tone-deaf shit maybe that I've heard in a long time, which is saying something.
And he tweeted this after President Zelensky spoke to current members of our U.S. Congress. And obviously it was through video feed. And he's been wearing the same kind of uniform. It almost looks like a woolly pulley with like workman's pants. Cause he's basically dodging bombs and going from building to building in
And he's
Kiev.
wearing like an olive drab Under Armour type shirt
Right.
like underneath that. And he's just, I
Yeah.
mean, he's comfortable. He's doing war shit. Like the guy's
Right.
doing war stuff.
So Peter Schiff tweets this out. I understand times are hard, but doesn't the president of the Ukraine own a suit? I don't have much respect for current members of the US Congress either, but I still wouldn't address them wearing a t-shirt. I wouldn't want them to disrespect the institution or the United States. And people immediately, he got ratioed pretty much immediately. People were pissed.
What is the ratio? Do you see it?
So it got 3,000 likes, but it got, at the time of your blog, and I'm sure the number's way higher now, it immediately had about 12,000 quote tweets.
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
People were like, this fucking moron. And tons and tons and tons of comments.
Do you know who Amy Trask is?
No.
She used to be the vice president of the Raiders whenever, in like the 90s, whenever Al Davis was the owner. And she is like the most kind person on social media. Anytime if you tweet at her, she'll respond and be like, and hi. Like she always feels like she has to do like, and hi, like just saying, she's said so many times that social media can be so mean that people are vitriolic to each other. And so she always ends each mention with hi, like, hello, how are you doing? She replied to this guy and was like, maybe it's because his people are under siege, and didn't include and hi on it. And that might be the first time I've ever seen, and I've been following her for like 6 years. And I was like, Amy is furious. She doesn't end it with and hi.
She never.
Amy Trask comes from you, you know you fucked up.
And he kept digging in. Somebody replied, you're totally right, being sarcastic. Like between the shelling of his capital, escaping assassination attempts, and attacks against civilians all across his country, he really should have been ironing his suit to address Congress. Mm-hmm. Peter Schiff digs in and says, come on, he doesn't do his own laundry.
Right. That was the one, like everybody says and can tweet some mind-blowingly stupid things from time to time. Like that's not outside the realm of possibility. If you've been on Twitter or social media for a long time, you're going to do that. But to think your excuse is somebody else is going to do his laundry for him during the middle of a war, like what are you talking about, guy?
And he kept, even this person said, as a Ukrainian, seeing him in a suit during such staggering times would insult my serving friends and me. Like this Ukrainian saying, I would have been pissed to see him in a fancy suit. Peter Schiff digs in against an actual Ukrainian and says, no. And that's all he said. I think they would understand their president was addressing a joint session of the US Congress representing the Ukrainian people. And he's like, no, how about you listen to the Ukrainian and how he just told you? I
mean, imagine if remember when President Bush showed up at Ground Zero and he was wearing like I think he's wearing a polo and some like 5'11" tactical pants and like a baseball hat. If he would have showed up there in like a State of the Union suit, people would have been heated.
Yes.
Heated. I mean, if you go down there like Katrina, any major disaster, and you're wearing a suit, people would be like, you tone deaf motherfucker. Even President Trump, when he showed up in Puerto Rico throwing toilet paper rolls and stuff, he was wearing a polo.
And I think this shows like clearly Peter Schiff is a brilliant guy, but you can be a brilliant guy and still be very stupid or an asshole. You
completely
can be very
lack
brave,
common sense.
You can be a hero and still be a complete moron in a lot of ways. You know, there's duality to a lot of people out there. So just a friendly reminder of that. But yeah, that was big news yesterday. People just annoyed by that. So
I was annoyed by it too. I was actually kind of triggered by it. Like, how could you be so fucking dumb? All right, let's move on to save rounds and alibis. Kate, you got anything?
I do. So we are doing this. We did this draft at the office for Sling Sleepers. Barstool has a Sling TV channel where you can watch it anytime. Like a bunch of our shows are on there. I think Brandon Walker has like 47 shows, but you draft the underdogs of the March Madness bracket. So you, me, and Captain Cons drafted New Mexico State, the Aggies. Mm-hmm. So I'm just rooting for them. They play tonight at like 6:20 or something like that. So I'm going to be watching that game, rooting them on. Because what do we get if we win? It's like 50 grand or something.
50 grand between the whole squad, which I would love to have that. I think it would be a great little boost going into, or not just a little boost, it'd be a big boost going into the summertime. It would be fantastic.
Yep. So the New Mexico State Aggies, cool mascot, double pistols, cool mustache, very cool stuff.
Guns up is their hashtag.
Guns blazing. At Barstool NMSU, give them a follow, whatever. But anyway, so yeah, I'm just rooting them on tonight. I do enjoy March Madness. It is fun. And I'm just excited for it's so warm down here. I can't get over it. I'm just
When do
excited
you
for
go back?
Cons' wedding. Sunday.
Okay.
What? What?
Nothing. Nothing at all. I really don't have anything. I don't know why I said it that way. All right, that's it. I don't really have anything either. We'll be back to here. I don't know if Cons will be back on Tuesday. I don't think
I don't
he's doing
know.
his honeymoon right after.
No, he's
so
not.
so maybe he will be, but I think he's doing his honeymoon this summer. I actually heard that he's where do you think he's gonna go? Has he said? I think he's going to Italy, right?
I was gonna say Europe. I can see them going somewhere because Alex is great with she's like a foodie, so I can see them going somewhere with like really good food and stuff. But I love Alex. I'm really happy for them both. We gotta give a shout out to Captain Cons. We rip on him, but we're really happy for him.
I'm not participating in this.
Well, I'm saying it. She is amazing and wonderful, and I'm excited for them. But I'll still call him out if he farts on his wedding day.
I will say that he lucked out big time. That she's way better than he deserves, for sure.
Oh, yes.
All right, sound the retreat.